Hello to everyone and welcome to this week's vlog. I really want to thank Sean Chilton for filling for me for the past 2 weeks so that I could take some time to recharge and connect with family and friends. So Sean, on behalf of all of us, thank you for covering. Our staff have been working tirelessly, as we know, since the start of the pandemic to keep Albertans safe and healthy. And I hope that everyone has been able to take some well-deserved time off to rest over the last couple of months. It's hard to believe that summer is almost over. In fact, it's kind of depressing as I go out for my runs. The leaves are starting to change color. It's a bit cooler, and I'm watching to see if the geese are starting to fly south. In addition to everything else, we know that the new school year is upon us, and that brings a lot of different emotions for those of us who have children in school. We know that many of you are feeling uncertain about what the return to school will mean for your children, your families, and your workplaces. And our assessment centers have been working really hard to ensure that teachers and staff have been able to be tested for COVID-19 before they return to the classroom. Employee relations and HR business partnerships have also been working hard to ensure that leaders and staff have access to the information that they need to be supported through an unprecedented school year. So to talk more about the return to school and what it will look like for AHS, I'm joined here today by two guests. Tony Bennett, who's our Executive Director for HR Analytics and Planning, and Veronica De Freitas, Program Manager for Respectful Workplaces and Employee Relations. So thank you to the two of you for joining me today. So I'm going to start off with you, Veronica, and ask you, what is the most important thing that we want staff to know about return to school?
I think it's really important to know and acknowledge that we recognize that returning to school will affect our staff in different ways. Many of us have children of our own that as parents we need to support. I personally have 3 kids, 2 who are returning to school and 1 who's also returning to daycare. And then as an organization, we need to support all Albertans during this transition as children head back to school across the province. This year brings a lot of uncertainty. We are faced with keeping each other safe and healthy with COVID. When dealing with this change, it's also very important to communicate what is going on. What this makes me think of is if you're a leader, you need to be checking in with your staff and seeing how that return to school is affecting them. So as staff, we have to also continue to talk to our leaders and share what you're dealing with and ask the questions that you have. We just need to continue to be patient and kind with each other and keep supporting each other as we go through this time.
Tony, how will AHS be supporting our staff through the school reentry?
We all know how important our healthcare services and our employees are and have been to helping Albertans through the pandemic, and we're going to continue to do so. This means it's really important to make sure our employees are able to work, even if that is working from home. AHS has put together a number of resources for employees on a number of topics, including when their kids are going back to school, much like Veronica, mine are as well, had their first day of school today. But we have a number of resources for employees when their kids are going back to school and for their leaders as well. There are back to school FAQs for leaders to help them answer the questions for their employees. As well, there's the alternate workplace arrangements or AWA resources that are available for leaders and staff that you can find on Insight. As well, there's really good information and resources for employees, mental health resources through our EFAP program that are also available for staff and information on that on Insight as well.
Wonderful, thanks very much, Tony. A lot of staff have been asking about what's going to happen if there's a confirmed case or an outbreak at their child's school. So Veronica, is there any information that we can share about that? And will staff be required to self-isolate when their children are self-isolating?
So we'll continue to defer to the government's requirements as outlined in the reentry plan. And I would encourage parents to review it for their own personal circumstances. You can find it on the government's website. If your child does become sick or is required to self-isolate, you can also refer to the Return to Work Decision Chart for healthcare workers. The Return to Work Decision Chart for healthcare workers is available on Insight and ahs.ca. This chart will provide you the guidance on whether you need to self-isolate or be tested. If you yourself are sick and experiencing symptoms, self-isolate and arrange for testing.
So Tony, do you have any advice for staff who are still working from home and have children returning to school? Because I know that AHS, we're continuing to ask staff who are able to work remotely to continue to do so until further notice.
As I mentioned before, employees can go to Insight and look up the AWA resources that are there. It goes through and outlines a number of the options and availability for working from home. But really their best resource is to talk to their leader and talk to their leader if they need some of that flexibility as the school year starts up. It's also important to keep in mind that there are leaves of absences or available banks and vacation, overtime, etc., that employees have at their disposal as well if staff need that time away to deal with family care issues or other issues that might come up around their kids going back to school as well.
Veronica, I know that you have some children. You had mentioned 3 of them that are going to be returning to school next week. So could you share with us some of the ways that you've been preparing for the return, both physically and mentally?
You're right, Verna. It's been a fairly multifaceted decision for me and my family. So I've been looking at how do I prepare my children, myself and my husband, and my extended family. So my kids, first there was the decision about whether we send them back to school or if we look at online learning. For us and the mental health of our children, it was certainly the best decision to send them back to school. So then I was really focusing on how do I physically make them safe. My kids are well stocked on some cloth masks that they have access to. And also I've bought them small little bottles of hand sanitizer just so that they have their own things that they can do as children to keep themselves safe. The other thing we've been doing is just talking about what for them to expect. What is it going to look like? Just so that they can start preparing mentally on how things are going to be different this year. For myself and my husband, we've obviously talked about the situation quite a bit, as I'm sure, all of our staff are and most families. And, I've been relying and talking to my colleagues. Some of them are parents. And so, certainly it's been very helpful to talk to other parents to see what they're planning for and what they're doing for their children. And I've been thinking about the mental health impacts on myself. This week I've recognized it's a challenging week for me and for some of my colleagues. And so I've been aware of how it's affecting me. And so I'm conscious of reaching out for support when I need it, as well as, if I feel that I need to take some more proactive measures and access the great resources through our EFAP provider, I can do that with Homewood. And lastly, my extended family, I have parents who are both in their 80s, so they're certainly in a high-risk group. And so I've had to have conversations with my mom and dad about what is it going to look like over the next couple of weeks, staying away, how do we keep connected, and just how that's going to look different for us, at least for the next couple of weeks as we sort of navigate this new change.
Wonderful. Thanks very much for sharing that, Veronica. And lastly, Tony, where should parents and staff go for more information about return to school?
Really, and please, we really encourage employees to have conversations with their leaders. We hope that this would be the first place that they would turn. And as a reminder to those leaders, there are those supports for you as well. The Managing Questions resource is available on Insight, and your HR business partnership contact is there to help you through this as well. It's also important to keep in mind that you can go on and you can check the Government of Alberta website for the most up-to-date information on school reentry plans. And I'd also encourage parents to go and look and check your local school districts or your local school's website for information specific to your own child's school. I know for our kids and their junior high that they just started at today, there was some good information that was provided in there as well. And I hope, and from what I understand, other schools and districts have done the same.
Thanks very much, Tony and Veronica, for this very helpful conversation. I think it's going to be very informative for our staff when they have questions about return to school and what kind of supports that there are in place. I have to say that I'm really grateful that my kids are adults and I don't have to worry about schools because it's so difficult, Veronica, especially what you've described about having to go through some of the thought processes as a parent. So for all of you, if you're feeling uncertain about the return to school and how it might affect your work, really, as Tony said, encourage you to reach out to your leader. And remember that AHS offers mental health resources to support staff and families. So visit the COVID-19 page on Insight and scroll to staff supports to access these resources. So thanks again for all that you do. I hope that everyone has a safe and healthy Labor Day long weekend.
Together, we do amazing things every day.